Today we celebrate Grace Chapel and its 20 years of service in the Valley. But how did it all start? And more importantly, where are we headed as a body of believers? For the next few moments we will look at Grace's history and its future.
We were in Missouri, and we were feeling that we wanted to come back to...
We were planning a church.
We were planning a church in Missouri, yeah. And we were feeling that we were supposed to come back to Arizona.
We were at a conference in October of '86 with my brother at my brother's church. And John Holland, who was a supervisor at that time, approached me and asked if I would come and take this church that they had, Foursquare needed a pastor for in Scottsdale. So we agreed, and so now we're back in Springfield,
Yep.
and we do the kid thing. Tell them about that.
Well, there's a place called Country Ken, and we decided to take our kids out and gracefully tell them that we were moving again. You have to realize that this was 2 major moves across country in less than 2 years. I personally didn't really want to come back, but I knew it was the Lord. And so we went and we just shared with our kids that we felt God was telling us to move back to Arizona. And I don't know how, as I think back, I don't think it was a super negative. I'm sure Andrew has his story.
That didn't go over too well with me. I was happy and I had friends and as much of a life as a junior higher can have in Springfield, Missouri.
We prefer to call it a circus tent church.
The church in the round.
The church in the round. And we did pull up to the church, and it was scary.
Because we took over what was left really of a large charismatic church that had been in the valley for years and years called People's Church. We were, though, the 3rd pastor after the transition. And so by the time we got there, they had moved across the street from a huge facility back into their original building that they had started in the 60s, I think, or 70s. But it is round. It's perfectly round. And
it was a wonderful place for the kids to run around in circles.
Yeah, they would love. The kids loved to run around in it, and but yeah, that was a challenge. We ended up selling what was about 10 acres of property, and out of that, we were able to buy the property we're on now, buy all the land, and then build the first phase. Cash. And so that we were a little church because of the assets had been preserved, we had lots of money, a lot more than what a church our size should have been. So by the time we moved into the first phase, we were about 200.
200, yeah.
And when we got there was around 40 people or so, something like that.
Yeah.
Phase 2 came about.
We had been pastoring on this facility or this property for 10 years.
Yeah, and we just it just became obvious that we needed to finish the project, and that we had a long range plan for the property, and that it was just time to do that. And that time we didn't have assets to sell, so we fundraised and borrowed money and then built this second phase.
You know, I was feeling in my heart that we should finish the project, that the Lord had given us this whole idea, this whole building plan. And that was the neat thing about it. As we stayed, the only thing we changed in our plan as far as the facility is we put in the big screens, because back then that wasn't the thing to do. As you go through a project like that, and you get a little afraid because you didn't have the money like you had hoped, and people do leave over a building project, but some of them even came back. But we knew it was the Lord, and we don't regret it.
No,
the timing, in fact,
wonderful.
at times we thought maybe we should have done it sooner, but the Lord knows. And so we did it, and so here we are today.
I think it's a part of God's plan to touch this community. Pastor Richard and Becky have the heart not only for the community, but for the world. And I think that captivates the hearts of a lot of people who come here. It's also a place to come and be healed. When I first started coming, I just bawled through worship for about a month. And it's a healing place. So people come and be healed, and then they come into their potential and purpose, and that they're released, and it just keeps going and going and going.
A couple things. I think that we are people that are steady. We are basically the same all the time. We don't have a lot of highs and we don't have a lot of lows. We've been incredibly blessed with a church that has not had any major issues in it. People come and people go, and that's another thing I think Richard's very releasing. We've been able to plant lots of churches. We've put a lot of leaders in churches through the valley, and I think that's an awesome thing when a leader can release. And I always laugh and say, you know, I want to be able to go to the grocery store and see a person that has left our church and not go down the other aisle.
What I hope to see in Grace Chapel is that we would have a greater impact in our community, and that we would see that evident right here in our congregation as we grow and expand and possibly outgrow this building.
I just see more. Just one big word, more. More kids reaching out to their friends, more kids reaching out to the world, more kids getting captivated by God's purpose for their life, more kids coming, more kids bringing more kids. I just see it growing and growing and growing.
Richard, 1A, take one. But if we place our hope in Jesus Christ, we can overcome. Welcome to Grace Chapel. I'm Pastor Richard Castile, and I want to invite you to join us in our worship service this coming Sunday. All right.
Rolling and action.
I went to kids camp a couple of years ago, and I totally had a blast.
Anna, remember last Tuesday when...
Welcome to Grace Chapel. I'm Pastor Richard Castile, and I want to join you in...
We used to do what all kids did back then.
I'm Pastor Richard Castile, and I want to invite you to worship with us this Sunday morning.
And you get to learn God's Word. Sorry if I spit on you. Oh, now don't you want to do that one again?
That was brilliant.
Come on now.
That was utterly brilliant.
Two men dressed as lifeguards. Yeah, there's life.
I can't.
I guess the thing.
Welcome to Grace Chapel. I just lost my tempo.
Weenie roast.
We have to save Seth and Camp Clemala.
Camp Trumbola. Camp Trumbolaya.
Why is that little stupid line so hard?